I'm the principal investigator of this study. Spatial neglect is a common and disabling outcome after typically a right brain hemisphere injury. Patients lack awareness for people and objects in the contralesional, typically left hemifield. The causal mechanisms of this clinical condition are incompletely understood, and there is currently no consensus about the effective treatment. Here we investigated a new hypothesis about the disease mechanisms. The hypothesis: the locus of attention is coded in retinotopic coordinates. This is combined with information about the direction of gaze to compute the locus of attention relative to the head. If the gaze is perceived more rightwards than it actually is, the spotlights of attention will be displaced rightwards. To test this hypothesis, we included two groups of participants. Both groups consisted of patients with a right hemisphere stroke. One of the group had spatial neglect, the other group did not have spatial neglect. The key task was the attention task. We mapped the locus of attention in response to a salient object but task irrelevant. We call this object a distractor. The participants fixed their gaze, then a distractor was presented in the left visual hemifield, and shortly after, the participants saw a letter, an E or an F, at various locations in the right visual field. The task was to read the letter. We recorded accuracy and reaction time. In half of the trials, the letter E or F was preceded by the distractor, and in half of the trials, it was not. Accuracy was at ceiling. This was an easy task. This means that one can use reaction time data only to calculate the locus of attention. We computed the locus of attention in response to the distractor as the maximum positive distractor effect. A positive distractor effect measures the advantage in visual perception caused by the distractor. This is the opposite of what one typically sees in a healthy control group, where the distractor hinders rather than helps visual perception. We looked for a positive distractor effect here because a previous study reported that in this group such an effect exists. We estimated the locus of attention in response to distractor as the location with the peak or the maximum positive distractor effect. This figure shows example data in one patient with spatial neglect. Targets were presented at various locations relative to the distractor. Reaction time for trials with a distractor are shown in orange. Reaction time for trials without the distractor are shown in blue. The black arrow indicates the peak distractor effect for this participant, the peak positive distractor effect for this participant. In this case, the only location where positive or reverse distractor effect could be measured. We compared the magnitude of the peak positive distractor effect across the two groups and found a statistically significant effect. Then, to find out whether the patients allocated attention consistently to a particular location in response to the distractor, we calculated test-retest reliability of the PPDE location across two sessions. To do so, we split individual data into two halves, a training set and a test set. In the training set, we identified the location of the peak positive distractor effect, PPDE. In the test set, we extracted the value of the distractor effect at that location. A permutation test assessed the likelihood of finding a larger positive distractor effect in the test set at a random location versus at the peak positive distractor effect location indicated by the training set. The results were significant in the spatial neglect group only. Finally, we conducted a VLBM analysis to identify brain areas whose lesions correlate with the magnitude of the displacement of the locus of attention in response to the distractor. We ran this analysis in a brain region of interest, shown here in red. This region is capsula interna, corona radiata, and superior longitudinal fasciculus. These are white matter fibers that bring left eye movement information via the corollary discharge from the superior colliculus and the frontal eye field to the posterior parietal cortex, which is involved in the allocation of attention to locations in the left hemifield. A lesion of these areas was hypothesized to cause a rightward error in eye position estimate and bias attention to the right, in line with our hypothesis. We found statistically significant voxels in these areas in the spatial neglect group only, here shown in blue. Our results support thus the hypothesis at both by behavioral and biological level.